Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about one of our least favorite progressive channels here on YouTube, the Young Turks. We've discussed TYT quite a bit over the years too, since they're not only one of the most biased and dishonest left-wing platforms on the internet, but also they're supported and propped up by all the major big tech platforms while they do it. The Young Turks get special treatment, better recommendations, ad deals, and other goodies, despite being a bunch of liars and fake news reporters, whose news work basically amounts to them reading headlines from other outlets, like CNN or MSNBC, as if they should be trusted either. Yes, and also, TYT's been known to support things like Black Lives Matter, feminists, social justice warriors, Bernie Sanders, and even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who the Young Turks actually had a pretty big hand in bringing into the public spotlight and eventual political power. TYT's founder and owner Cenk Uygur actually started the group the Justice Democrats, a group which eventually cast and brought up AOC last year. So needless to say, Cenk and TYT have a pretty bad, heavily liberal, and morally corrupt past, and we're only getting started today. Next, we need to talk about a newer addition to the Young Turks team, Hasan Piker. He's been making waves this week with a couple of terrible anti-American quotes, which we'll get to very soon. But first, let's discuss this character and his past on the internet, and how he's come to be such a big figure at TYT in the first place, and also in liberal circles at large online. Hasan's bad style and horrible takes have gotten him a number of funny nicknames over the last couple years too. First, he's been called Brown Fabio, since he sort of fancies himself as some kind of wannabe model or pretty boy, always posting pics in ridiculous hipster or millennial type outfits. Yeah, this guy posts selfies on Instagram like he's a 14-year-old girl, yet somehow at the same time, he expects to be respected and taken seriously in news and political discussions. Pretty out there. Next, Hasan has a nickname he calls himself, which goes by Woke Bae, and it seems to be some sort of joke about him being woke, but it's not really as self-deprecating as you think. This guy is woke unironically, and he even uses his lame Woke Bae nickname as a screen name on some websites like Twitch. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that part. Hasan streams on Twitch constantly, hours and hours every day, playing video games and pretending to care about politics, when really, I think he's more interested in doing his hair and picking out jewelry for his next photo op. And his prevalent and numerous Twitch streams are actually going to come back to bite him in the ass this week, but let's go over his last and more prominent and relevant nickname, Cenk's nephew. This isn't only an apt description of Hasan though, it's also a sort of meme to just call him Cenk's nephew instead of using his real name, because frankly, being the nephew of Cenk Uygur is really all this guy has going for him. This relationship is also, of course, the whole reason he got hired at the Young Turks to begin with. Hasan is related to the company's owner and figurehead, so that means he not only got a job in a business without deserving it, it also means he really can't get fired there either. And this sort of lack of accountability is what spurred his recent controversy too. Combine his very often and very long Twitch streams with having no accountability, and that spells disaster for someone like him, who just can't help himself and he can't keep his mouth shut. You see, what happened this week unfolded in two parts. There are two big, very telling and very anti-American quotes that have come from Hasan Piker this week, and they're really something everyone should be worried about. Both of them came from a Twitch stream he had a few days ago, where Hasan was reviewing an episode of the Joe Rogan podcast, where the guest on there was U.S. Congressman and former Navy SEAL and war hero Dan Crenshaw. And the fact that Hasan thought he could comment on this meeting of minds while streaming in his little apartment while also wearing a sleeveless t-shirt, well, that's already funny enough on its own. But what Hasan eventually said is even worse than you might imagine. Take a look at this brief clip and you'll see what I'm talking about.
America deserved 9/11, dude. I'm saying it.
We're there to partner with them. We're not there doing our own thing. We're there partnering and training
in a video
and
game,
equipping and enhancing their capabilities. So that's part of what we're doing. And the other part is just knowledge.
America deserved 9/11, you say. And this is coming from an Arab-descendant Muslim apologist who also co-hosts the Young Turks on YouTube. The Young Turks, of course, are named after the genocidal group who committed the Armenian atrocities. But while Hasan's main gig is on YouTube and Facebook, this stream that's in question today was on Twitch though. But all these platforms have quickly banned people for much less, and saying much less offensive or hateful things than what Hasan has already said. And don't get me wrong either. Lots of people will say identifying this as anti-free speech when we discuss this kind of situation, but that's not what our side is implying at all. We are still very much free speech, but we also believe in free speech for everyone, which is not what's happening online. Instead, right-wingers and conservative leaners get banned for saying much less egregious stuff than this. And meanwhile, Hasan can say the worst things he can think of, bashing America and shitting on the graves of thousands of innocent people who died on that tragic tragic day, but he completely gets away with it without even getting a slap on the wrist. And pointing out that he's not banned isn't us trying to ban him ourselves, and it's not anti-free speech. No, what we're really saying is if the rules were applied fairly, he would get banned, certainly. But since the big tech companies aren't fair and they're biased to the left side, people like Hasan will never get kicked off, and he can basically get away with saying whatever he wants. But things don't end there for Chink's nephew this week. Next, after getting extensive backlash over this very anti-American and frankly pro-murder comment, well, next Chink's nephew tries to delete the evidence. CN quickly went back to his original live stream on Twitch, and then he tried to edit out the now infamous "America deserved 9/11" line. Unfortunately though, for him, the internet never forgets, and when people went back to search for that line and couldn't find it, this forced them to then sit through the rest of the stream, where they eventually found more bad hot takes that arguably could even be worse than the first one. Here's the next clip, or as much as I can even show of it, since it has rather graphic and profanity-laden language, and since I'm a right-winger, I would get banned for sharing that with you, but I bleep things out and try my best. Here's the most you can see of this clip that's allowable on a conservative channel.
What the What the is wrong with this? A brave f***ing soul his eye hole with their Isn't that how he lost his dumbass?
Okay, wow, you know what? When you censor that thing for a right-leaning channel, it's pretty much incoherent. But let's keep in mind, this clip aired on a left-wing one and was totally acceptable, kind of showing the hypocrisy here, in a joke way. And basically, to sum this clip up, Chink's nephew was going off on Dan Crenshaw, the congressman again. And this time, Chink's nephew was actually mocking Dan for losing his eye at war. But don't just take my word for it. Let's look at a tweet that describes this even better. My buddy Sean over at the Actual Justice Warrior channel, he had a very interesting tweet about this that actually blew up on Twitter. It says, Chink's nephew called the man who took Dan Crenshaw's eye a brave soldier. This is what happens when you're gifted a job by your uncle you know you didn't earn, and it eats away at your mental state. Well put, my dude. And happy belated birthday to Sean too. It's good to see tweets like his are getting shared around once in a while, because it really shows how bad and corrupt this Hasan character really is. Chink's nephew is literally trolling the internet, pretty much trying to get attention by saying the most radical and left-wing crazy town thing he can think of. And whether or not he actually believes this shit is kind of irrelevant now. He's clearly getting attention for it regardless, and also no repercussions, like so many others. So while this is a good example of the radicalness of left-wing politics today, it's also a great way to expose the hypocrisy of online censorship and also outrage culture. If any of us said something similar about another country or another war hero, we would be banned, fired from our jobs, and our banks would close our accounts with them. But when liberals like Chink's nephew say that innocent Americans deserve to die, and then he calls the people who severely injure our soldiers heroes who deserve honor, well, now we can really see the double standards the left has. And they're also willing to impose these standards in public spheres. So just imagine if Democrats were in charge of more after this. I mean, they're already running Hollywood, entertainment, Congress, and the media. And all of those spaces have become starkly left and pro-politically correct culture. Big tech is another one run by the left, and one that's particularly relevant today because not only can we see how liberals are biased when they rule and operate on the internet, but also this is how our entire country's government will be if the Democrats win the presidency in 2020 next year. Fortunately, Democrats don't have a viable candidate, and also they keep showing how bad and terrible they really are, like with Chink's nephew, and they also show us how badly they run things, like with big tech in the news, in what we're seeing in today's story. Next, Dan Crenshaw himself responds, giving Chink's nephew a final blow that may end his entire public career and credibility, if he even had any cred to begin with. Here, Crenshaw tweets, Hasan seems to confuse improvised explosive device with some weird terrorist fantasy. LOL. Sorry for triggering you, Hasan. You're no Pete Davidson. Stop trying so hard. Pete Davidson, of course, being a younger comic and actor who is currently on the cast of Saturday Night Live. And perhaps Chink's nephew does fancy himself some kind of comedian here. He very well might have been trying to make a joke when he said all those terrible things on Twitch, but there really was no punchline to it at all, and there obviously was no subtlety, tact, or care into who could be affected and who was being insulted when he said that. And look, I'm not trying to be the joke police here, and I'm not trying to pretend this is hate speech or anything either. And also, I wouldn't even advocate for banning Chink's nephew or making him not be able to say things like this. But what I am getting at is, and what I think the general consensus is, people should not want to say this kind of stuff, and it should be embarrassing, and people should especially not say this about their own country, a good country who's given us all a home and opportunity. And it's it's also given many others work, success, and good luck, and also, for some, good fortune. Chink's nephew himself is probably making very good money while working at TYT, an American company centered in Los Angeles, California. Chink's nephew even has enough money to live in an apartment in a very big and expensive city there. Plus, he has extra cash to buy all those designer clothes and expensive jewelry and hats, the stuff he sports on his Instagram and Twitter, those cringy pics. And to top things off, Chink's nephew didn't have to work to earn the place he's gotten either, so he's really the last person who should be complaining about the United States of America. In addition, to reiterate and reinforce my point, no one should be saying this about anyone. Saying a country deserves to have over 3,000 innocent people murdered should be a highly frowned upon phrase. And yes, a political news organization like the Young Turks having Chink's nephew on staff does say something about them and what they believe too. It's not like Chink's nephew works at some random company like a butcher shop or, say, a bigger company like Ubisoft. That's a video game company in California too, and if Chink's nephew worked there, his political opinions and internet rants would certainly be less relevant. Nobody really cares if your video game's tester, who works on the title Just Dance, thinks that terrorists are good people. I mean, it's very weird and troubling to think that, but it shouldn't really affect that person's project and what they're working on. But as we all know, Chink's nephew doesn't work at a video game company. He works at a fake news company who actually mostly reads headlines and editorializes everything in a left-leaning, progressive way. And Chink's nephew, he's not a writer or camera guy there either. No, he's a prominent host at the Young Turks who gets paid to make videos and commentaries with his opinions about the news and politics every week. And now that we know that one of TYT's prominent employees, who's also the nephew of the owner and the leader of the company, well, now that we know how he feels about the United States and our veterans, we can easily assume that a lot of TYT feels that way too, or at least some of them do. That is, unless Chink's nephew gets fired soon or something, or even suspended or punished in some other way, because this outburst would warrant some kind of retribution and rehabilitation, at least if he was working at a credible news place. But so far, as we've seen, as of today, nothing has happened to Chink's nephew at all. In fact, Chink himself actually appeared on CNN, on the Fredo Cuomo show, immediately after Chink's nephew's tweets went viral. But they all appear to be pretending as if nothing happened because Fredo didn't even mention Chink's nephew. The guy didn't even think to ask, hey, is your nephew pro-Al-Qaeda or something? Sure seems to me that a better news station would at least bring this big, horrible, huge, and embarrassing situation up, but alas, I guess Chink and the left and the people who support him, they're going to try and sweep yet another lunatic on their side under the rug. What do you guys think? Does Chink's nephew hate America? Is it appropriate to mock a soldier who lost their eye in combat? And do you think TYT and Chink himself actually agree with and go along with these kinds of comments? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.